Well, so much for a Romney-Rubio ticket. There is a report this morning that Florida Senator Marco Rubio, who is, of course, just on everybody's short list for VP, hasn't been vetted yet by the Romney campaign, which could be a strong indication he didn't make the cut. Now, Rubio's Senate office and top political advisor had no comment to NBC News. Rubio wasn't saying either on CNBC this morning, although he did seem to mount a defense to the criticism that he doesn't have the experience to be VP.
I won't discuss the vice presidential process out of respect for Governor Romney. I get more experience every day. There are issues that are new to me that I've not dealt with when I was a state office holder. On the other hand, some of these things we're dealing with are not necessarily rocket science.
And a new poll out this morning shows a majority of Americans, 64%, support the president's new immigration policy. Another poll had shown a big jump in support for the president by Latinos. Let me bring in USA Today Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page and Politico's Chief Investigative Reporter Ken Vogel. Good morning to both of you.
Hey, good morning, Chris.
All right, let's start with the talk about Rubio. I thought, Susan, that maybe it seemed a little more likely after the president made his move on Friday, kind of as a way to counter it. What are you hearing about the possibility of Rubio as VP? And did I hear too much when I thought maybe he was trying to explain away his lack of relative experience on CNBC this morning?
You know, I interviewed Rubio the other day about his new book, and he basically refused to engage on the question of the vice presidency. But I am surprised, I think definitely a scoop there by Jonathan Karl, because we had assumed that Rubio, who is a real favorite of the Tea Party movement and who can help Republicans reach out to Latino voters, we thought he would at least be on the list. I'm a little surprised. Let's hear what the campaign has to say about it maybe later today. I hope they come back and either confirm or deny or whatever they're going to do about this report.
Yeah, Ken, if he's not on the list, is it a surprise?
Oh, it absolutely would be a surprise. I think all of us assume, looking at his relative strengths, that being that he's from Florida, that he could help with the Hispanic vote, that he has a bit of foreign policy experience where Mitt Romney is lacking, would make him an obvious selection, or at least put him on the short list. I don't think that we can necessarily rule out the possibility that he may still be on that short list, and that there may be early stages of vetting that are going on without his knowledge. In other words, doing the backgrounding before they actually go to him and request all kinds of documents detailing his finances and personal history and the like. So I wouldn't be surprised to see this the Veep stakes circle back around and include him again. And there's a lot more speculation left until Mitt Romney will actually choose a nominee here.
All right, hold on, both of you. I want to bring in NBC Latino producer Adrian Carrasquillo. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did.
I did. Wow. Thank you, Adrian. So if Rubio doesn't end up on the Romney ticket, can he help them to win still, or do you think it's still a possibility?
I mean, I think he can definitely help them. I think it's Florida, 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 especially with Cuban-American voters in Florida. Maybe he can't help with other Latino voting blocks, but in Florida, in an election that's much closer than people thought it was going to be, I think he can definitely still help Romney.
It would also go against a lot of social media buzz if he's not picked, let alone even be on the short list. I just saw something about Facebook. He's the big pick on Facebook, right?
It's not exactly exciting to like a U.S. senator on Facebook, but he has over 263,000 fans. He has the best Facebook engagement, likes and comments out of the other nominees that were on the list. So, you know, he is a social media dynamo.
And Susan mentioned the book that is coming out today. There's actually competing books. One is by him and one is by a reporter. What jumps out at you? What don't Americans know about Marco Rubio?
Two things jumped out at me. His grandfather was an undocumented immigrant for a time. Technically, this is true. He returned to Cuba after being in the United States. He ran out of money, and then he went back to the United States, and an immigration judge said, you know, you're not a refugee. You cannot get your immigrant visa. So he was undocumented at that time.
And secondly?
Secondly, actually, in April 2006, Florida lawmakers were being criticized for not putting foster children with parents. And they said, what about the idea of expanding it to include gay couples? And he said, these are some of the most disadvantaged children in the state, and they shouldn't be part of a social experiment.
Susan, you were talking about the book just a minute ago, and we know what a book helped to do for a young unknown senator, relatively unknown, named Barack Obama. Could this book do the same for Marco Rubio?
You know, I think that's a great comparison. I don't think we've seen a figure in national politics rise as fast as Marco Rubio since Barack Obama. And keep in mind, he's 41 years old. He doesn't have to run for vice president this time. He could run for president in 16 years, and he'd only be 57. So he's someone I think is going to be around for a long time. He's someone with a lot of promise, and that's why people are paying so much attention to him.
Yeah, and Ken, you know, let's say that if Rubio does not become the vice presidential nominee, and there are a lot of other people out there who you could make an argument for. Does Mitt Romney have to do something to shore up the Latino vote? At least, I mean, one of the things that has been suggested by George Will, for example, is that he would need to get the same 31% of the Latino vote that John McCain got in order to at least hope to win in November.
And I think in key states he's going to have to do better than that. Places like Florida, Colorado, Nevada, where we see the contested Hispanic vote, where we see the super PAC supporting President
Obama
how does he do
up
on the air. Well, certainly picking Marco Rubio would be one way. Short of that, he needs to ramp up a surrogate operation. He needs to come up with a better answer. When he's asked about whether he supports the president's executive order, so far we haven't really seen him. We've seen him go at the process of it and suggest that an executive order is temporary. He would like to do something more permanent, but he hasn't actually said whether he would repeal the executive order or continue it. I think that's a problem, and I also think that just Hispanics have been a reliable Democratic voting bloc. When they haven't been is when there has been a real concerted effort to reach out on the issue of immigration, like we saw with the George Bush, Karl Rove positioning on it. And in the last few years, Republicans have largely turned away from that position, so it's going to be tough for Mitt Romney.
Yeah, Susan, are you surprised that he hasn't had an answer for this? I mean, it happened on Friday, and he was asked, 5 times, by Bob Schieffer on Sunday, and then he was asked on Fox again and still didn't have a real answer. Are you surprised that the campaign hasn't formulated something a little clearer at this point, given the stakes?
You know, I think Ken makes a great point, because we haven't heard from Mitt Romney on whether would leave this policy in place as president. That might go a long way to reaching out to Latino voters, but it could put him at odds with some of the core Republicans who have extremely strong feelings about immigrants who are here illegally, whether they are children, young people or not. So it may be one of those situations where he is trying to pivot from the primary process to the general election and trying to figure out exactly how to do that without really alienating two important blocks.
Susan Page, Ken Vogel, always great to have both of you on the program. Adrian Carrasquillo, come back. Good to see you. Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Chris.